Hello, welcome to the Prime Podcast. We're here to talk about the week in consumer electronics and technology news. This is our first episode. I'm William, and I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about the Prime. You might have heard about the Prime just a little bit. I haven't talked a whole lot about it yet, but the Prime is basically the successor to ZL Studios. And you are probably familiar with ZL Studios since the first part of this podcast is actually going to be published on both my ZL Studios YouTube channel as well as my new Prime YouTube channel. There are links to subscribe to both of those channels in the description below. But for future episodes of the Prime, after August 1st, you should check out the new YouTube channel since that'll be the only channel where I upload this stuff in the future. The Prime is a consumer electronics and technology news site that is going to be launching on August 1st, 2012. And it's going to launch as the successor to ZL Studios, which has been running for the past almost 4 years now. The Prime aims to offer unique and in-depth consumer electronics coverage every day of the week. Instead of just cloning existing tech news sites like we have done in the past, and then essentially we've just kind of reworded, paraphrased, kind of slightly added our own opinions to topics. And with the Prime, we actually aim to go more in depth. We did have some in-depth articles before on ZL Studios, but the Prime offers is going to have just mainly these in-depth articles. So instead of having like 20 articles every podcast, I'm only going to have 5, and in this case 4. But we're going to spend a quite good amount of time on each article, cover the topics in depth. That's one of the big things with the Prime. We aim to add detailed commentary and media to the news in order to make the day in tech news more informative. So that's just a little about us, about the Prime. Our website's not completely finished, but you can check it out at theprime.co. We're actually now starting to post content every weekday, Monday through Friday. And I'm mostly trying to publish editorials, which are more in depth. Although I will occasionally post just plain news updates, like what was on ZL Studios previously. And that's because I don't always have a lot of time, because writing these 2,000, 3,000 word editorials takes a good amount of time. And yeah, so we're gonna get started with news that happened last Friday, or what I wrote about last Friday. It kind of happened throughout the whole last week. And that was Google and the Nexus 7. Now, this Nexus 7 really fascinates me. I've always liked Android tablets in the past, kind of. I like Android Android in general. That's what I mean. Android tablets, I did review a few of them, and generally speaking, they were kind of sluggish. Honeycomb, it wasn't the best operating system. It wasn't really complete, and I really didn't like the whole Android tablets in the past. They were usable and they worked fine, but they just weren't all that great. And that's really the same sort of thing for all other tablets. The Apple iPad's really the only really great tablet that's arrived. Of course, there's other tablets like the Kindle Fire that have been pretty good, but they just aren't quite as full-featured and complete as the Apple iPad, which is really dominating the market right now. But things are about to change with this Nexus 7 tablet, which Google will launch at Google I/O 2012 this year. And it really might not be the best tablet overall, but it certainly will be the best $200 tablet, since this is a $200 tablet. I mean, you can get 2.5 of these things instead of getting the Apple iPad, which is really kind of impressive. And Google really took what they learned in the past. Earlier this year at CES 2012, Google said they were going to double down on tablets, and this is really what they're doing by doubling down on tablets. Instead of offering a $600 slow Android tablet that doesn't really work well and doesn't have a lot of apps, Google's launching a tablet that's really cheap, portable, fast, and in the end it'll eventually have a good amount of apps too. But let's get started. It'll compete mainly with the Kindle Fire and other 7-inch tablets, but it'll also maybe compete with the iPad. Google says that they had they had Asus build the Nexus 7 from the ground up in just 4 months. But the truth is that the Nexus 7 actually was first introduced a year and a half ago. Asus unveiled the 7-inch Android tablet at CES 2011, and they called it the Asus ePad Mimo. Asus's Mimo was announced running Android 3.0 Honeycomb with a dual-core processor, and it was going to cost $500, which is kind of good, like at standard Android tablet price. Pretty expensive in the end, especially when you want to compare it to the iPad, which is really a better tablet. But the tablet then turned into the ME370T at CES 2012 earlier this year, and it was designed to be a cheaper version of the Mimo, but it was basically the same tablet. So Google said they built the thing in in just 4 months, which is kind of true in a way. But in the end, Asus built it in a year and a half, and Google just helped for the last 4 months of the development. So it seems that Google saw this tablet at CES 2012. Google was like, "Hey, I kind of like to use this for our next Nexus tablet." Asus said yes, of course, a great opportunity. And this is in the end now going to be a $200 Nexus tablet. Asus had to get rid of things like the rear-facing camera, micro SD card slot, and micro HDMI in order to make it cheaper. And Google helped out, and they swapped out honeycomb for ice cream sandwich, and now it's jelly bean, which they have on it now. And they also swapped out the processor, the dual-core Qualcomm processor, for a quad-core Tegra 3 processor, which will make things very snappy and smooth. So really, this is kind of what NVIDIA talked about at CES 2012 as well. It's a sub $250 Tegra 3 powered AIMer tablet. NVIDIA calls it Project Kai. So kind of interesting here. And let's get into the hardware of this Nexus 7. So Google has already announced that they're making nothing at all when they sell the hardware of the Nexus 7. They make $0 every Nexus 7 that they sell, which it's for some people that might seem surprising. Like companies like Apple, I don't think they'd be able to very easily sell devices like that. They don't sell basically a $200 iPad that they make nothing out of. They basically sell $500 iPads that they make a little bit of money from the hardware and more money from the software. Google, they just don't seem very interested in making a ton of money from hardware. Instead, they plan to basically just take some money from AdSense ads. People will browse the web, see AdSense ads when they're browsing the web on these devices, get money there. People maybe get more storage in Google Drive, get money there. And people also buy applications, so Google will also get money there. Google and then makes a ton of money off of each one of the majority of these things that have been sold. And Amazon and then has had a very similar approach with the Kindle Fire, where they sell at a low price and make pretty much nothing back for the sale of hardware. And then they make money from media sales and the Amazon App Store. The hardware for the Nexus 7 is really pretty impressive. It's kind of what you would find on a $500 Android tablet, minus a few key things. It has a 7-inch 1280 by 800 display, quad-core Tegra 3 processor, 12-core graphics, 1 gig of RAM, and 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera. Meanwhile, it doesn't have some kind of premium features like rear-facing camera, 3G and 4G connectivity, or even a micro SD card slot. I can live without a lot of those things. I can live without I can live without a rear-facing camera, and I can live without a micro SD card slot. But I kind of think that Google should have possibly made a little more expensive, maybe $300 version that had 3G/4G connectivity. I think a lot of people really like having a 3G, 4G tablet. I reviewed the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7.7, which is on Verizon's 4G LTE network. I really like that a lot better than the Galaxy Tab 8.9 or 10.1, which I also reviewed. So I kind of like having 3G/4G. But of course, Google can probably say, like, you should buy the Galaxy Nexus as well and tether to your tablet, which would make a lot of sense. And as time goes on, there's a lot more Wi-Fi hotspots all over the world, so it's not really as big of a deal as it was in the past. Another kind of issue is storage. A lot of people put a ton of songs, a ton of movies and stuff on their devices, and the Nexus 7 only has 8 gig of storage or 16 gig of storage, depending on what model you get. The 8 gig one is $200. The 16 gig version is a little more at $250. But for people like me, 8 gig is completely fine, especially with the cloud. Google wants you to use Google Drive, so why not just use it? Really, that's kind of what they're kind of pointing to. So generally speaking, I'm really impressed with the hardware of the Nexus 7. It looks to be very high quality. Things like Gorilla Glass, IPS on the display, are really nice. Or rubber backing, a really large 25 milliampere battery that supposedly offers 9.5 hours of battery. And at $200, this Nexus 7 is an amazing deal as far as the hardware goes. And the good news is the software is also very, very, very impressive. Yeah, so Jelly Bean might not, or Google put Jelly Bean on, this is the first Jelly Bean device that Google has launched. And Jelly Bean might not be the biggest upgrade, but it certainly does add a lot of features like Google's new personal assistant called Now. Google in the past, you know that they make really significant upgrades. Look at Android the Gingerbread compared to Android 4.1 Ice Cream Sandwich. A huge, huge upgrade. New user interface, completely new. and it made Android seem like a completely different operating system in a good way. Huge updates aren't really bad at all, but carriers haven't really liked them being pressured. Carriers have been pressuring Google to release less significant upgrades to help prevent Android fragmentation, which has been a huge issue. So basically, Google launches a new version of Android every year that's very different from the previous version, and then Google just releases the source code. The companies like Samsung will have to take time to really just kind of just get the operating system working on their hardware. It might not be always very easy to do, so it takes months to do that. Once they get the software all ready, they have to send it to the carriers. The carriers and the manufacturers have to both test it out. And you're like now, iSuper Sandwich is 6 months old, and only 10% of Android devices use it. So that's very, very, very bad. And like especially old devices, I think it's a 2-year-old Android device now, which is my phone now, or maybe it's just a year and a half. I don't know. It's getting kind of old now, but it's the only reason it has iSuper Sandwich is because it was a really cheap phone. A lot of developers kind of thought, hey, this is kind of a good phone. Look at all the people who have it. Let's hack iSuper Sandwich onto it. And that's kind of what's been happening with these the Android community, since these manufacturers, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to update this old device, so you have to bring it back to the community. But the good news is that I think most devices with iSuper Sandwich now will be getting Jelly Bean. I don't think it's that big of an update. What's called 4.1 Jelly Bean, and overall it looks the same and it feels the same. It's just improved. It's just improved basically. One of the improvements is called Project Butter, which basically makes everything buttery smooth. And that basically means all the animations are running at 60 frames per second on VSync basically, and it makes the operating system very smooth and clean looking. Don't be stuttering when switching applications or navigating menus, which is really a good thing that Android has needed in the past. There's also something called Google Now, which is Google's Siri competitor, and Google uses your information to help improve and personalize the results. At least you'll be able to see the latest news and find where the easiest way home, depending on traffic. So Google will update you and say hey, it can take 2 hours to get home because there's bad traffic. Why not take this other route? So like that, you can easily find a restaurant nearby without having to type a thing into your phone. And Google Now also works without even an internet connection, since Google no longer requires an internet connection for voice typing, which is pretty impressive what Google did right there. A small update comes with Jelly Bean is an improved home screen editor. Now you can add a widget to the home screen that will automatically resize itself to fit on the home screen, to rearrange the little icons so it's easy to fit on your home screen. You don't even have to say, you'll probably be seeing there's not enough not enough space on your home screen. That message as frequently as before. The final addition with Jelly Bean is improved notification tray, which makes things more detailed. You'll see more of your email, more information on your friends, status updates, and so on. And you can even do things like reply or Google Plus One a message on Google Plus without even needing to open up the Google Plus application. So the hardware and the software on the Nexus 7 is really, really impressive. Now let's take a look at the competition and see how it really stands up against other devices like the Kindle Fire, Nook Tablet, and Galaxy Tab 2 7.0. And maybe even the iPad. So the Nexus 7 competes directly with all these 7-inch Android tablets. And let's get started with the Kindle Fire. It's $200. It has its own custom version Android. It doesn't have any Google services. It doesn't have Google Play Store, no YouTube, no Gmail, and it's all Amazon, meaning you have the Amazon App Store. It has a 7-inch IPS display at a 1024 by 600 resolution, a 1 GHz dual-core TI processor, 8 GB of storage, 512 MB of RAM, and it's a pretty standard 7-inch tablet with 7 hours of battery life. The Nook tablet from Barnes & Noble is a $250 Android tablet with a custom skin, but with support for the Android market, YouTube, Gmail, those sorts of things. It has a 7-inch IPS panel at a 1024 by 600 resolution, 1 GHz dual-core TI processor, and also micro SD card slots, so you can get up to 32 GB of extra storage on the device. It has 1 GB of RAM, 16 GB of storage. You probably won't need the extra storage right away, but it is there if you need it. It'll last 9 hours on a single battery charge. The Galaxy Tab 2 7.0 is the most similar than the Nexus 7. Overall, it's more of just a standard Android tablet that costs $250. It runs iSuper Sandwich. It has touchers on top. It has a 7-inch Super PLS display at a 1024 by 600 resolution, a 1 GHz dual-core TI processor, and 1 gig of storage, 8 gigs of RAM, or 8 gigs of memory, 1 gig of RAM. It has support for micro SD card slot as well, so you can get more storage. It also has 3G support and a rear-facing 3 megapixel camera, which is something that's kind of unique to this device. Honestly, I think the Nexus 7 is the best out of all these devices, but we should be seeing the success of the Kindle Fire and the Note tablet later this year, which could make things a little more interesting. Some rumors are suggesting that the Kindle Fire will be costing $150 for the original one, and you can get a $200 next generation one with more features and all things like that, but they're just rumors. But for $200, the Nexus 7 is a great deal, especially when compared to the Apple iPad, which costs 2.5 times more. But we had to take a look at the potential of this device. We had to see what it should do. So the Nexus 7 is just you should just know that it's like any other Nexus phone. And more specifically, we just like the first Nexus phone because this is the first Nexus tablet. It should really create the spark needed to start the Android tablet market. Third parties realize that what they have been doing wrong and create improved Android tablets. Consumers will see that there are more options that seem increasingly appealing in the Android tablet market. And finally, developers will realize that Android is a real option and that developing tablet-specific applications might be a good investment. And then Android as a platform should be really able to compete with iPad. Since this isn't really going to be a device that's made to sell incredibly well, Google just wants it to kind of show the competition, show everyone what Android can do and why Android is a good platform. So Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft are all planning next generation tablets. So things are going to change. You know, there could be a 7-inch iPad. There could be a 10-inch Nexus 10 Android tablet. There could be a 10-inch Amazon Kindle Fire. Could be a next generation Kindle Fire. And meanwhile, Microsoft's going to have a completely different kind of strategy, which is also very compelling. And that's Microsoft plans to launch a Surface tablet, which is going to be a cheaper ARM-powered Windows tablet, as well as a more high-end Windows 8 Pro version powered by Intel processor. And it's kind of it's a great way. Microsoft's really trying to transition people from having a PC into having just a tablet, and they're doing it with Microsoft Surface. So we're going to stay tuned for later this year and see what all these companies have to offer later this year. The article I posted on Monday kind of really relates to the Nexus 7 article. It talks about how Microsoft's planning to launch Windows 8 and sell it at really low cost in order to increase sales. And it all kind of stems from Microsoft wanting to do everything they can to avoid another Vista. 6 years ago, Microsoft was just putting the finishing touches on Windows Vista right before launching it to the world. Vista was really unsuccessful. People paid a really high price to upgrade from XP to Vista. They found Vista didn't work smoothly on their 5-year-old computer that they purchased when Windows XP launched. Plus, they didn't happen to get if they did happen to get a computer working well with Windows Vista, all their legacy Windows XP applications didn't work. So that really was a bad operating system. And Microsoft really doesn't want to launch another unsuccessful operating system. Windows 7 was a success, so Microsoft doesn't have to worry about that anymore. But they do have to worry about Windows 8, which is launching very, very soon. This is going to be kind of interesting since Windows 8 has a completely new user interface. And there's also going to be a new version that just runs Windows Metro applications, meaning you won't be able to run any previous Windows applications, even from Windows 7, which is very, very interesting. So I'm going to first start out by talking about the versions of Windows 8. There's going to be Windows 8, Windows 8 Pro, and Windows RT. It's kind of going to be a lot simpler than Windows 7, which we had to choose between Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Professional, Ultimate. It's a lot of versions. They're all slightly different. Windows 8 is going to be a lot simpler. There's a couple of versions of Windows 8 and a tablet version. So if you have a current Windows 7 computer with Starter or Home Basic or even Home Premium, you'll be able to upgrade directly to Windows 8, the standard version, without any issues. It supports nearly all the Windows features, minus a few things like encryption, the ability to join a Windows domain and remote desktop. But for the average user, Windows 8 is just a perfect version since it has everything you need and nothing you don't. If you have Windows 7 computer with Professional or Ultimate, you'll be interested in Windows 8 Pro, which you'll be able to upgrade to without losing any files or settings. Windows 8 Pro is going to be identical to the standard version of Windows 8, but with a few more features like encryption, Windows domain joining, and remote desktop, which are very common requirements for business computers. So if you have a business or you're just an enthusiast, Windows 8 Pro is a really good option. Windows RT is going to be the more interesting version of Windows, since if you have a Windows 7 computer right now, it probably won't be able to even run Windows RT, since it's made for ARM. Windows RT is just Microsoft's new Metro user interface, nothing else. So it doesn't have the Windows desktop, meaning you can run applications like Microsoft Office that will be updated to support Windows RT, but more professional programs like video editors probably won't work with Windows RT right away, at least. So it's designed for consumers that want a tablet powered by ARM, which will be cheaper and have more battery life than Intel tablet running Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro. But if you have a business, Windows 8 Pro or Windows 8, one of those tablets might be a better option for you, because you'll be able to run your older applications, legacy applications, just professional applications that don't really work well with just Metro user interface. One of the big problems with Windows Vista and even Windows 7 is the cost. Windows has been really expensive in the past. We're talking about prices of $200 and up for just a new copy of Windows, which is really expensive. And that's kind of a mistake that Microsoft has been doing in the past. And they don't want to repeat that, so they're going to be actually selling Windows 8 for a really low price. Microsoft has several options if you plan to upgrade to Windows 8. One is if you recently purchased a Windows computer running Windows 7, or if you're planning to purchase one in the future, you're better off with this plan. It's a deal where if you purchase a Windows computer between June 2nd and January 31st, you'll be able to get a Windows 8 Pro upgrade for just $15, which is a pretty good deal. It's for a limited. It's called the limited time Windows Step Up offer, and again, Windows 8 for $15 is a pretty good deal. But I might just consider waiting just a few more extra months and wait for companies like Dell, HP, and Samsung to start shipping their computers with Windows 7 pre-installed. That way you don't even have to worry about upgrading your operating system at all when it arrives this fall. So let's say you purchased a Windows 8 or Windows 7 computer a while back when Windows 7 launched 3 years ago. So you probably aren't going to get that $15 upgrade option. But you still will be able to get a deal just because you have Windows 7. That deal is if you have a previous version, or if you have a Windows version, if you have just any version of Windows 7 from Starter to Ultimate, and you want to upgrade to Windows 8 Pro, you'll have to pay just $40. That $40 cost is if you purchase it online. If you purchase the upgrade at a store, it's going to cost $70, which either way it's pretty cheap, much cheaper than like the $200 upgrade fee that you had to pay with the previous versions of Windows. The big question now is, what will Microsoft charge for a plain Windows 8 license, or even maybe a plain Windows 8 OEM license? Hopefully they won't be too pricey. I'm assuming they're going to be less than a Windows 7 license, but we don't really know the specifics at this point in time. We just know that Microsoft wants people to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 8, so they probably will be pretty cheap when compared to previous versions of Windows. So now, when exactly is Windows 8 going to arrive? We're really expecting it to arrive in November. We don't have any confirmation on that. We're looking at a potential launch in October or November, most likely October, since Windows 7 launched 3 years ago, and it'll launch in October. 3 years after October of 2009 lands, it's in October of 2012. So that makes a lot of sense. If you want to get Windows 8 a little early, you can check out our article. I'll link to the article in the description below, and you'll be sent to a link to go to download the Windows 8 release preview, which I've personally been using Windows 8 on my secondary computer since the fall of last year, and then I started using the Windows 8 on my primary computer since February of this year. So overall, Windows 8 is a very stable operating system that works on various different types of hardware, like on a netbook, which is my secondary computer, on my desktop, which is my current computer, and right now Microsoft's sending out Windows 8 to manufacturers that want to build Windows 8 computers. So in the end, Microsoft's Windows 8's finished, and Microsoft's just looking to ship out Windows 8 later this fall. So in the end, I think Windows 8's going to be successful. A lot of people don't like the new Metro user interface, but honestly, after using Windows 8 for nearly a year, I'm really used to the Metro user interface. I kind of thought it was weird at first, and I'm completely used to it. And it just makes a lot of sense. Microsoft's avoiding making Windows 8 a failure by making things very simple and very cheap, and I'm just really looking forward to it. So especially on a device like the Windows or Microsoft Surface, which are going to come with Windows 8 pre-installed, and it's going to kind of merge a tablet with a notebook computer, which is going to be very, very interesting. And most gadgets are pretty strong, but a lot of times you can break a gadget over time. So things like batteries begin to wear out over time. Some gadgets like the iPad require you to buy a completely new iPad in order to just get a new battery. Apple's iPad is nearly impossible to open up, so it's really nearly impossible to repair things like the battery inside an iPad. Many other tablets are very similar to the iPad and extremely hard to repair. The good news is that if you plan to purchase the Google Nexus 7 and are possibly planning to repair your tablet in the future, you are in luck, since instead of using glue to hold the Nexus 7 together, it's simply using plastic clips, meaning you can easily open up a Nexus 7. Some might say that Apple can't use plastic clips for the iPad since it's so thin. iFixit says that the Nexus 7 is only 1 millimeter thicker than the iPad, so that really isn't the case. I think if like Google made this thing a 10-inch device, and then they probably could make it just a little bit thinner, since there's more space inside of it that they could do for other things. So I guess really the plastic clips don't add a whole lot of bulk to your tablet. Overall, the Nexus 7 is a really easy tablet to repair according to iFixit. Things like the battery can easily be replaced without even needing a screwdriver. Which is really, really nice if you plan to keep your Nexus 7 for more than just a couple of years, and still have that same 9 hours of battery life that you get at launch. Even the small motherboard should be replaceable as long as you're careful. So if you want to repair something like the display, you can. The only really issue with repairing the display is if the glass is welded to the LCD panel, so you like pay a little bit extra and get the whole display instead of just like the LCD or just the glass. So the Google Nexus 7 has brought up a really interesting question. Would you prefer to have a slightly thicker device that is repairable, or a thinner device that isn't repairable? Personally, I choose a thicker device that is repairable, simply because I've had a lot of small issues with some gadgets. Like I'm not using my Blue Yeti, which I've used in the past for podcasts, simply because the little USB port on the bottom of it, which I use to connect to the computer, it kind of bended and broke a little bit. So I actually was able to take the thing apart. I'm working to fix it right now, and I'm using the Zoom H1 now. But things like that, a lot of gadgets you can't really open up, like the iPad. If you have like the USB connection, the button breaks, you'll have to send it back to Apple and hope they'll repair it. But in many cases, they'll just like send it back to you and say buy a new iPad, and that's how you fix it. So I really like the idea of being able to open up a gadget and repair it just by swapping out a small little piece. Now on to some gaming news, and that is what will Microsoft's next Xbox console be called? So over the last year and a half, we've seen the next generation consoles, or over the next year and a half, we should see the next generation consoles arrive on the market. Nintendo already announced that they plan to launch the Wii U later this year. Sony's next console will obviously be called the PlayStation 4, but we don't really know what Microsoft's going to call their next Xbox. Microsoft has been very quiet about it. Basically, we haven't had any really. The only thing that has been confirmed about the next Xbox is that it won't be announced this year. The talk about the console being 6 times as powerful with built-in Kinect sensor, all that it's kind of just speculation, rumors. It might be true, it might not be true, but we're going to talk about the potential names for the next Xbox. But we'll start out by doing a little bit of history on previous Microsoft products and what they were named. Unlike Sony, Microsoft's very they haven't really stuck to a clear pattern when naming their consoles. Sony launched the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and more recently the PlayStation 3. Meanwhile, Microsoft launched the Xbox and then the Xbox 360, which kind of makes the next Xbox, the name for it, very unclear. It isn't just kind of like, it isn't going to be like Xbox One, Xbox 2, Xbox 3 like Sony does. So we're going to kind of guess what we're going to call it. In the past, Microsoft hasn't not named products in similar ways. For example, Microsoft sorted out Windows by having just simply a version number like Windows 3.0. They eventually moved to naming by the year the operating system launched, like Windows 95, Windows 2000. Then Microsoft started to give names like ME and XP and Vista to their operating systems. But in recent years, they moved back to naming just by version number, Windows 7, Windows 8. Other Microsoft products like Windows Phones have been named from version numbers from the start. Look at Windows Phone 7, Windows Phone 8, or Windows Phone 6.5. They're just kind of just plain numbers. So now on to some potential names for the Xbox. There are a ton of names. I'm talking about quite a few of them. For like the Xbox 720, Nextbox, ConnectBox, Xbox 3, Xbox 362, Xbox Loop, Xbox Infinity, and my personal favorite, Xbox 8. One of the earliest potential names for the next Xbox is the Xbox 720. Naming the next generation console the Xbox 720 does make some sense, since 720 is what you get if you take 360 and double it. The only problem is that 720 also means two circles, and that just doesn't really seem like something that Microsoft could really easily brand, so that wouldn't make a lot of sense. But it would make sense for Microsoft to name it the 720 simply because a lot of the people who talk about consoles and forums and things already call the next Xbox the Xbox 720, just because that's been what's been rumored for a very, very long time. Another name you don't really hear a lot, but it is Nextbox. That's kind of an interesting name. It does describe the next generation Xbox well. The problem with naming the next Xbox is that Microsoft would really have to completely rebrand everything, plus many might not be able to just go into a store and understand the Nextbox is really the next generation Xbox. Nextbox might be a good internal name for Microsoft, but it isn't really a good name for a final retail product selling in stores. Another potential name is ConnectBox, which actually is kind of cool as well. It would suit it well if the next Xbox has Kinect built in. It also would make people who could go into a store and tell that it is an Xbox or an Xbox accessory, because the Kinect has been very successful with Xbox 360. Kinect basically allows you to control your Xbox 360 using your voice and body, which is great for many games. But in the end, it would kind of require a lot of rebranding, and it just probably won't work very well for the next Xbox name. One name that might work out is Xbox 3, but it makes some sense, because 3, it is the third generation Xbox, and it really could be called Xbox 3, but it would confuse a lot of people because, you know, a lot of times people see products think that the biggest number is the best version, so like Xbox 360, 360 is a bigger number than 3. So people might not really be able to tell that this is the third generation Xbox and that it is better than the Xbox 360. But this might not be able to tell that. Plus, a lot of people don't even know that the first Xbox, the original one, even existed. So this might confuse them because they might think, what, there wasn't an Xbox 2. There's just an Xbox 1 and an Xbox 3. That's what people might think. But another potential name that might bypass that is the Xbox 362. That makes a good amount of sense. Adding the 2 to the end makes it clear that it is successor to the successor or next generation Xbox. Makes some sense overall, but it just makes the Xbox 362 seem like a small update instead of a brand new, completely revolutionary console, which is what Microsoft probably wants the Xbox to seem like. The final name, which makes the most sense in my opinion, is the Xbox 8. Today, that rumor actually started to spread. The name of the Xbox 8, but that would make a lot of sense. It isn't the 8th generation Xbox, but it certainly would work well with branding along with Microsoft Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. That's kind of why it would be Xbox 8, because it would kind of just make things better. Microsoft could say this is the... I just don't really know how to describe it, but it would just be very unified, so Microsoft people would be able to tell that the Windows 8, the Xbox 8, and the Windows Phone 8 all work together. They all are similar. They all have the Metro UI, that kind of stuff. So that's really a good possible name for the next Xbox 8. So even though there are countless rumors detailing the next Xbox, which I have no idea what it'll be like, what it'll offer, and more specifically what it'll be called, personally I like the Xbox 8 name, but Microsoft might go ahead and call it something that's popular right now, like the Xbox 720. We don't really know. But if rumors are true, the Xbox 8 should be pretty impressive. Should be 6 times as powerful as the current Xbox. Should have a really fast processor and really fast, powerful graphics card from AMD. Should support Blu-ray, 1080p output in 3D. A lot of the things are kind of old for PC gamers, but not a whole lot of people want to buy an unstoppable $1,000 graphics card each year just to be able to play every single game. These next generation consoles really push what's been popular in PC gaming for a while now, and make it just mainstream so everybody has it. They'll probably be expensive at first, ranging costs from $500 to $1,000. Meanwhile, the Wii U will probably arrive later this year at maybe $250. We should see the next generation consoles at E3 2012, and they should arrive on the market towards the end of 2013, the holiday season. So that's about it for the Prime podcast. We'll probably be back next week. You can check out our blog, theprime.co. It's not quite finished yet, but you can check it out. You can give suggestions. This is our first episode of the podcast. We'll give you updates each week until August 1st, which is when the Prime officially launches. So stay tuned for the next episode of the podcast next week. You can subscribe to our YouTube channels and get more updates there. And that's about it.